My name is Clara Mitchell, and at 29 years old, the first thing I noticed that Christmas morning was the hum of the old heater, kicking on just as the sunrise broke over the bare trees outside. The faint warmth drifted through the vents, carrying with it a soft smell of cinnamon and pine. For a moment, it felt exactly like the dozens of Christmas mornings I'd spent in this house, quiet, safe, and full of expectation. I blinked against the pale light filtering through the dusty blinds of my childhood bedroom. I wasn't rushing anywhere. Out of habit, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The boutique I had built, Willow and Thread, had been growing fast, and our Seattle expansion was finally real. We'd signed the initial lease, the vendors had been confirmed, and the numbers I'd been balancing for months were strong. My accounts had been solid the last time I checked, but the holidays had made me loosen my grip on the constant pressure. Just for a breath, the banking app took a second longer than usual to load on the small-town Wi-Fi. I typed in my passcode, let my thumb hover for a heartbeat, then pressed down. The screen blinked once, then settled. My balance showed 0. I stared, my eyes dry and wide. 0. That had to be wrong. I swiped down, refreshed. Still 0. My chest tightened as I tapped into the business account. Same thing, 0. I flipped over to savings. Empty. Even the tiny emergency account I barely touched had nothing. A shiver ran through me, even though the heat was still humming. I opened the transaction logs, my hands trembling. Row after row of transfers scrolled up, dozens of them, executed in perfect sequence, all marked as verified from a recognized device. I hadn't logged in since the 23rd. The device listed, it wasn't mine. It was someone in this house. For a few long seconds, I sat frozen. Downstairs, I could hear footsteps across the kitchen floor, the scrape of a chair, the sound of a drawer opening. The smell of coffee drifted up through the hall. I pulled on a sweatshirt, slid my feet into the old slippers at the edge of the bed, and opened the door. The hallway was glowing with soft garland lights, holiday music. Some jazzy version of Let It Snow trickled up from the living room. Everything looked the same as always, but the number pounding in my head wouldn't leave. The kitchen was warm and loud, filled with the usual chaos of Christmas morning. My mum, Janet, stood at the stove, humming along as she stirred, scrambled. Eggs, the scent of cinnamon rolls drifted from the oven. At the table, my older brother, Ethan, sat slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone with one hand, sipping coffee with the other. "Morning," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He looked up and gave me a quick smile that didn't touch his eyes. "You look like hell." I ignored it. "I need to tell you both something." My voice was calm, maybe too calm. Last night, all of my accounts were drained. My business, personal, savings, everything. $250,000. Gone. Ethan didn't even flinch. My mum turned slightly, her wooden spoon pausing mid-stir. "Gone," she echoed. "Gone," I said flatly. Transferred out around 1:30 in the morning from a known device. A device registered to me, but it wasn't me. Ethan leaned back in his chair, stretching like a cat that owned the room. He tilted his head and gave me that slow, smug smirk I knew too well, the same one he always used when he thought he was smarter than everyone else. "Prove it, Ms. Businesswoman." My mum let out a light laugh, but it sounded uneasy. She turned back to the stove. "Sweetheart, it's Christmas morning. Maybe it's just a glitch, or some delayed posting. You've been under a lot of stress lately." "I checked the logs," I said, my eyes locked on Ethan. "It wasn't a glitch." He raised an eyebrow, then went back to scrolling his phone like he had nothing better to do. "You're probably just tired. Happens when you mix ambition with too many spreadsheets." I didn't respond. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat perfectly still, watching him. Every tiny shift, every twitch, every sip of his coffee, That smirk was all the confirmation I needed. And the silence from my mum, that was confirmation too. I used to tell myself he'd grow out of it when I was 15. I bought my first phone with babysitting money I'd earned watching the twins across the street. It wasn't anything fancy, just a blue flip phone I had decorated with tiny silver stars. I was proud of it, until it vanished 3 days before my birthday. I tore apart my room, checked under the couch cushions, even sifted through the garbage. My mum said I probably misplaced it. A week later, I spotted it sitting on Ethan's dresser. Same painted stars, same smudge near the hinge. Only now, it had a different SIM card. I picked it up, turned it over, and he walked in right then. "You went through my stuff?" he asked. "That's mine," I said. "No, it's not." "Yes, it is. You're confused." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get defensive. He just dismissed me, like I was stupid, when my mum found out. She told me I was probably just tired. "Your brother wouldn't steal from you," she said. "You probably left it in his room." It kept happening. Junior year, I built an entire science fair project. Research, design, poster board. Ethan showed up the morning of, slapped his name across the front, and when we won, he gave the speech. "We worked really hard," he said. Later, he convinced me to co-sign a phone contract to build credit. I didn't even make it to the 3rd billing cycle before the collection call started. "It's just a couple $100, he said. "Don't be dramatic." Every time, I forgave him. Every time, I thought it would be the last time. But it never was. He always pushed further, and our mum always looked the other way. And now, sitting at that old kitchen table, watching him sip coffee from a holiday mug and scroll like nothing had happened, I realized this wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the most expensive one, and it wouldn't be the last. Unless I stopped pretending. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy, like I was walking into a crime scene no one had bothered to tape off yet. My room looked exactly as I had left it. The throw blanket folded neatly at the edge of my bed, the charger plugged into the wall, my laptop resting on the desk as if it hadn't been touched. But deep down, I knew better. I sat at the desk, pressed the power button, and waited. The login screen blinked awake, glowing in the dim light. I hadn't opened this laptop since arriving home 2 days ago. I had promised myself I would take a break over the holidays. No work, no stress, just family. That had been the plan. I typed in my password, and the desktop loomed onto the screen. Everything looked normal at first. No files open, no windows. Left behind, no activity in the recent list. I should have felt relief, but instead I leaned closer, scanning every detail. The power cord was plugged into the right side port. I never used that one. It was loose and temperamental. I always chose the left port. I reached around to unplug it, and that's when my fingers brushed against something small and cold. A silver USB drive tucked into the back port, almost hidden. A clear cap snapped over the end. There was a faint smudge of lipstick near the edge. Coral, pink, not mine. My heart dropped. I pulled it out slowly, staring at it too long, then slid it into my backup laptop, the one I always carried just in case. The folders looked empty at first, but I knew where to look. I opened the metadata. Created 1:34 a.m., December 25th. Modified 1:36 a.m. Device name, Mitchell Core. Local network, private IP, inside this house. There it was. Quiet, undeniable proof. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to my encrypted drive, and then opened Signal. I sent the images to my contact, a friend in cybersecurity I trusted more than anyone else. .me. Need you to pull shadow data off this drive. Timestamp confirms access from my system while I was asleep. Him. Got it. Don't touch anything else. Back up every file. I'll scrape what I can. I stared at the screen long after the message came through. The room didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt still, like the kind of silence that follows something breaking. Not before, after. I backed everything up. Then I sat back in the chair, numb. It wasn't just the money. It was the confidence Ethan had that no one would notice, that no one would stop him, that I wouldn't stop him. When I finally went back downstairs, the living room had been transformed into post-Christmas chaos. Wrapping paper scattered like leaves, empty coffee cups on every table, carols drifting lazily from the speakers. My cousins were laughing in matching pajamas. My aunt was trying to snap blurry photos no one would ever print, and right in the middle of it all sat my mother, smiling like she had already forgotten everything I had said. Ethan stepped forward, holding a small velvet box with a silver ribbon. "For you," he said, his voice light, practiced, "wanted to get you something timeless." Mom gasped the way only mothers do when their favorite child puts on a show. She opened the box carefully. Inside, nestled in satin, was a sapphire. Teardrop necklace. My chest tightened instantly. I recognized it. I had bookmarked that exact design 3 weeks earlier, right after we signed the Seattle lease. I had saved it in a folder labeled after launch. I hadn't bought it yet. I wanted it to mark a moment, to be a gift tied to something I had earned. Now it sparkled in her hands as she lifted it. Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan, it's beautiful," she whispered. "You didn't have to." He shrugged, giving his modest smile. "You deserve nice things." She wrapped her arms around him, kissed his cheek, and said the words I had heard too many times. "You're such a good son." I stood there, frozen, watching the memory of my intention get stolen in real time. He didn't just want my money. He wanted the meaning behind it, the gesture, the credit. He always did this. He never erased lines. He signed his name over. Then he rewrote scenes, changed the script, made himself the star while I faded to the background. And everyone around him let it happen. My mum held the necklace up to her collarbone, beaming, asking for someone to help clasp it. I turned before she could ask me. Back in my room, I closed the door, sat on the bed, and opened my laptop again. The screenshots were waiting, the USB data, the logs, the typing stumps. But now, the weight pressing on me was different. Not just shock anymore. Now it felt like evidence. A little after lunch, an email came in. The subject line read, "Updated lease agreement, final draft attached." It was from my real estate attorney in Seattle. Routine, I thought. We had been ironing out final clauses for weeks. I assumed it was just confirmation, a piece of good news in a day that had offered me none. I clicked it open. At first, everything looked fine. The address, the terms, the square. Footage. Then I reached the signature page. Owner-operator E. Mitchell Holdings, LLC. Signed, Ethan Mitchell. Date, December 24th. I blinked. Then blinked again. It wasn't a typo. His name sat there, clean, bold, where mine should have been. A fake LLC I had never heard of, built with our last name, but without my credentials. I opened the edit history. His email was listed as the last modifier. He hadn't just taken the money. He had gone further, reaching into the next chapter of my life, the one I had worked for, the one I hadn't even lived yet. He had started rewriting it in his name. My hands felt numb. Slowly, I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Case Initiated. Into it, I dropped the lease PDF, then the screenshots of the USB metadata, the lipstick smudge, the login times. I copied the signal thread. I saved the time-stamped camera logs I had already been requesting from my cloud backup. I labeled everything cross-referenced, built a timeline. It felt ritualistic, like preparing for something sacred or terrible. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even curse his name. I just worked, Because now it wasn't about money or a lease. It was about proof, about showing the pattern, about showing his intent. He wanted the storefront, the name, the credit, the power. And for the first time, I let myself believe what I had always been afraid of. He wouldn't stop until everything I built had his name carved over mine. I closed the file and stared at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. The next time Ethan looked at me, I wouldn't be the quiet one anymore. I almost forgot I had packed it, tucked beneath a rolled-up scarf at the bottom of my bag. The small motion act minicam I had once used in the boutique, during a stretch when late-night inventory thefts had become too frequent. I had brought it, intending to install it at the new Seattle location, but now it felt like fate that I had carried it here. I plugged it into my backup laptop and waited. The files loaded slowly, each clip only a few seconds long, and less motion was detected. I scrolled until I found the one that mattered. December 25th, 1:31. A.M. The grainy footage flickered alive. There he was, Ethan, wearing one of Mom's robes, his hair pushed back, moving with ease, no hesitation, no guilt. He sat at my desk, opened my laptop, plugged in the USB, the same one I had pulled that morning. His fingers flew across the keyboard like he had done it before. Then he leaned back, smirked at the screen, and walked out. Don't know audio, no tricks, just fact. I paused the video, letting silence swallow me. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. Deliberate, rehearsed. Confident, I picked up my phone and called my contact. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "But I have it. Footage timestamp matches. It's him." He didn't reply right away. Then, firmly, "Then we're moving forward." I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Yes. Draft the timeline. I'm done waiting. Copy that. Back everything up again. I'll prep an encrypted folder." I ended the call and turned back to the laptop, letting the clip play one more time. Ethan's smirk didn't sting this time. It clarified things. He thought I would freeze. He thought I wouldn't notice. He never expected me to record him doing it. I copied the footage into my evidence folder and labeled it Primary Footage 1:31 a.m. Entry plus USB. Then I shut the laptop and let the room go dark again. There was no turning back now. The dinner table felt different that night, quieter than usual. Most of the relatives had already gone home, leaving only scraps of wrapping paper in the trash. A few empty glasses on the counter, and a silence that wasn't peaceful, just heavy. It was only the three of us now, me, Ethan, and Mum. We sat at the table with what was left of the holiday roast. My fork scraped against the plate as I pushed a piece of sweet potato across it. My heartbeat was steady in my ears. I set my fork down. My voice came out calm, maybe. To calm, I've been thinking a lot about boundaries lately. Ethan didn't look up. He kept buttering his roll like nothing was happening, about how easy it is to cross a line when you believe no one's watching. I continued, and how some people take things simply because they think no one will stop them. For the briefest moment, he froze. It was so slight that Mum probably didn't notice, but I did. I always did. Mum reached for the gravy, her eyes never leaving her plate. "You're always so serious this time of year," she said, her voice light, almost dismissive. "I think I've just learned how to see things for what they really are," I replied. Finally, Ethan looked up, slow and deliberate. "Still spiraling? Over your spreadsheets?" His tone carried that mocking edge he always used when he wanted to dismiss me without actually saying much. I smiled, not a big smile, just enough to tell him nothing. "No," I said, just realizing the difference between a mistake and a pattern. He didn't smirk this time. He didn't reply. He just went back to eating, Slower now. Mum cleared her throat. Can we not do this tonight? It's Christmas. I nodded. Once, but didn't look away from Ethan. The air between us shifted. Not much, but enough. He felt it. He didn't know what I had, but he knew I had something. And for the first time, I saw uncertainty in his face. I finished my plate in silence, stood up to clear it, and carried my dish to the sink. The water ran over the porcelain, and all I could hear was the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Strong, steady, ready. The game had already started. He just didn't realize I wasn't playing by his rules anymore. It was just after 10 o'clock when the knock came. Firm, deliberate, no hesitation. 3 seconds later, another knock from the living room. Ethan looked up, his eyebrows pulling. Together, Mum shuffled to the door in her robe, her slippers brushing against the tile. I followed closely behind her. When she opened the door, 2 officers stood on the porch. One held a clipboard. The other rested his hand casually against his belt. Is Ethan Mitchell present? The taller officer asked. Mum blinked. I'm sorry, what's this about? The officer's tone was polite but firm. We have a warrant. Financial fraud. Wire transfer abuse. We need to speak with him immediately. Ethan stepped into the foyer, his usual grin forming halfway before it faltered. What's this? He asked, trying to sound casual, but the voice was thinner now. I stepped forward, holding a folder I had prepared earlier. Inside was everything: documents, screenshots, timestamps, the USB footage. Everything labeled, everything catalogued. He used my device, I said clearly. He forged my lease. He drained my accounts. The details are inside. The officer took the folder without a word, flipping through the first few pages. Then, he turned to Ethan. We'll need you to come with us now. Ethan's face went pale. His jaw flexed, but he didn't speak. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes darted between us, like she had stepped into a play she didn't recognize. Ethan, she said, her voice breaking, tell them this is a mistake. But he didn't. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He just let them guide him out the door, down the steps, into the night. The house was silent when the door shut. Mum turned to me, her eyes glassy, her jaw tight. But there was no apology. In her face, no acknowledgement, only betrayal, as if I was the one who had broken something. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I just stood there, watching the door until the sound of the squad car faded away. Weeks later, the morning of the Seattle opening came. The sun cut through the wide front windows, spilling across the reclaimed wood shelves I had chosen, lighting up every corner of the boutique I had imagined for years. The checkout counter sat beneath the hand-painted sign, willow and thread. There was no ribbon cutting, no press release, no crowd. Just me, turning the lock, flipping the sign to open, and stepping back to take it all in. I hadn't invited anyone from home. I didn't need them there. Behind the counter, framed in glass, hung a quote in my father's handwriting. The ink was faded, but the words still carried weight. You don't have to scream to be powerful. He used to leave little notes like that on grocery lists, on birthday cards, even tucked into my jacket pockets. Quiet reminders, steady and sure. His voice was the kind that didn't shout, but stayed. I hadn't heard from Ethan since the arrest. No calls, no texts. His lawyer reached out once, but I forwarded everything to my cybersecurity friend, who handled it without me having to step back into the mess. Mum had sent me one message, the week after he was taken. You went too far, because I didn't reply, because the truth is, some people don't grieve the loss of a relationship. They grieve the loss of control, the loss of the role they once played in keeping you small. I didn't miss her voice. I had found my own. The boutique door opened. A woman stepped inside, her eyes lighting up as she took in the shelves, the soft green walls, the quiet, welcoming space. "Good morning," I said, smiling, standing tall behind the counter. For the first time in a long time, I felt the ground beneath me steady. This life, this business, this voice, it was mine, and no one could take it from me. The weeks after the opening blurred together in a rhythm I had never known before. Early mornings with the hum of the espresso machine down the street, quiet evenings arranging displays by hand, days measured not by family expectations but by the steady flow of customers. Every sale, every kind word, every smile, it felt like stitching a new fabric over the torn places inside me, not covering them, not pretending they weren't there, just weaving something stronger, something mine. But even in that quiet joy, the shadows of what had happened lingered. The first time the phone rang with an unknown number, I froze. My chest tightened, my palms went damp, and I stared at it until it went silent. The second time I picked up. "Is this Ms. Mitchell?" the voice asked, firm, professional. "Yes," I said. "This is Officer Daniels. Just wanted to update you. Your brother's case has moved forward. Plea deal in progress. Wire fraud, forgery, attempted identity theft. Should be resolved in the next hearing." I swallowed, the words catching in my throat. "Thank you," I managed. He paused. "You gave us strong evidence. Most people don't think to prepare like that. You saved yourself a lot of pain." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I just couldn't let him keep writing over my life. There was a kindness in his silence, then a simple, understood. We hung up, and I stood in the middle of my boutique, the hum of the heater filling the stillness. It was over, not completely, not neatly, but enough. Ethan was gone. Not out of my memory, not out of the world, but out of the space where he had once fed on me. And yet, the absence left its own weight. A month later, my mum showed up. No warning, no text, just the sound of the bell above the boutique door, and there she was, standing in the soft light with her purse clutched too tightly in her hands. Her eyes moved over the shelves, the displays, the plants by the window. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just stood there, looking, as if measuring the distance between what she had imagined for me and what I had actually built. "Mum," I said quietly, my voice more steady than I expected. She nodded once. "It's nice," she murmured, her tone flat. Not admiration, not approval. Just words. I didn't move from behind the counter. I stayed rooted, grounded in the place I had made. "Why are you here?" I asked. She shifted her purse, cleared her throat. "I thought maybe we could talk." I let the silence stretch. She had never wanted to talk when I was younger. Not really. She had wanted to correct, to dismiss, to smooth things over. For Ethan, talking had never been part of her script. "What do you want to say?" I asked finally. She looked down at the floor, her shoulders tightening. "He's struggling. In there he says you set him up." He says I raised my hand. Not loudly, not rudely, just firmly enough to stop her. "No," her eyes snapped up, startled. "No," I repeated. "I didn't set him up. I documented what he did. There's a difference. And if you came here to ask me to rewrite the truth for him, then you should leave." Her face tightened, years of habit rising up, the instinct to scold, to guilt, to make me feel small. But then she saw me, really saw me, the boutique around me, the sign behind me, the strength in my posture, the steadiness in my voice, and for the first time in my life, I watched her falter. Her mouth opened, then closed. She shook her head, muttered something under her breath I couldn't catch, and turned toward the door. The bell chimed softly as she left. I didn't follow. I didn't plead. I didn't chase her shadow. I just stood there, breathing, feeling the silence settle around me like a blanket, not heavy this time, but warm. The spring season brought color back into the world. Customers came and went, carrying little pieces of my work into their lives. Word spread. Local blogs wrote about Willow and Thread. A lifestyle magazine even called, asking for a feature on the quiet revolution of independent boutiques. One afternoon, a young woman lingered near the checkout, running her hand over a linen dress with careful fingers. She looked nervous, like she was carrying something she couldn't say. Finally, she glanced at me. I heard what happened," she said softly. "With your brother." My chest tightened. "Oh," she nodded, her voice low. "My sister did the same to me. Took everything I saved. Signed my name on loans. No one believed me. They all said I was dramatic, or jealous, or making it up. But I wasn't. And seeing you here, seeing what you've built, it makes me think maybe I can start again too." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. I stepped around the counter and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You can," I said simply, because I had learned the truth. It wasn't about being loud or proving yourself to people who didn't want to believe. It was about standing steady, building piece by piece, until the life around you became the proof. She nodded, her lip trembling, and whispered, "Thank you." When she left with the dress carefully folded in her bag, I sat back at the counter, letting the moment sink in. This wasn't just a boutique. It wasn't just shelves and fabric. It was a place where survivors could see themselves reflected. Not as victims, not as stories to be doubted, but as people who had rebuilt. And maybe that was the greatest gift my brother had never intended to give me. His theft had forced me to claim my own voice. To build not just a store, but a sanctuary. The night I closed the shop for the 100th time, I locked the door and leaned against the glass, looking out at the street lamps glowing softly against the pavement. I thought of the girl I had been, the one who sat quietly at family dinners, watching her ideas lifted and renamed, the one who folded herself small so others could take up more space, the one who believed silence was safer than speaking. She was gone now, not erased, not forgotten, just transformed. The woman I had become stood taller, spoke clearly, documented everything, drew lines and defended them. And as I walked down the quiet street toward my apartment, I whispered something to myself. I didn't just survive you, Ethan. I outgrew you. The words didn't come out with bitterness. They came out like truth. Soft, certain, because that was the final victory. Not revenge, not even justice, but freedom, the kind that no one can steal.